Good afternoon, good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome to our meeting this afternoon of Rotary Kilkenny. We will be joined shortly by Anna O'Sullivan, the curator and director of the Butler Gallery, and she'll be talking about two things. First of all, the new experience that is the Butler Gallery, but also about the exhibition that is currently on show by Richard Mosse. And that comprises two elements. First of all, there's the outdoor screen, which people may have seen in this huge construction, but also about the exhibition Incoming, which is shown on three screens in the main gallery of the Butler Gallery. This is a profoundly moving experience for anybody who chooses to go there, and I hope many of people will. But I'm going to start off by showing a video of Richard Mosse talking about his own work. Anna will be joining us, as I say, in about 10 minutes' time. And in the meantime, I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to get to see this work by Richard.
There are many different ways you can tell any given story. Like holding a prism to sunlight, you can refract light into its pure hues, helping us better understand how we see. Likewise, the way in which we relate a story can help us think through aspects of the story itself. The medium through which a narrative is communicated can operate like a prism to focus the tale and give it clarity. It can cast light on troubling or tragic testimonies, lending them lucidity. It can help enlighten us by illuminating our darkening world, multiplying our perception. The ongoing refugee crisis unfolding across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. This is not just one story, it is a series of stories. As many different stories as there are refugees and the people who help or hinder them along their way to safety. 3 years ago, as the wave of migration began to rise, I asked myself whether there was a way of engaging all these complex narratives of human displacement in a more adequate way. As the filmmaker Werner Herzog once said, we live in a society that has no adequate images anymore. And if we do not find adequate images and adequate language for our civilization with which to express them, we will die out like the dinosaurs. Herzog was talking about environmental collapse, a theme that runs through many of his films. He continues, we have already recognized that problems like the energy shortage or the overpopulation of the world are great dangers for our society and for our kind of civilization. But I think that it has not been understood widely enough that we absolutely need new images. I understand Herzog's use of the word adequate to mean a non-reductive form, one that encompasses the ambivalence of the story in question. In relation to my own work, I was aiming for something that engages with and reveals some of the problems faced by the refugee, both practically and existentially, as well as embracing the subjectivity of those receiving the refugee. As Europeans, our subjectivity is crucial to any story about refugees landing on our shores. This is because we are responsible for how we perceive the refugee crisis, for our changing attitudes towards refugees, for the Byzantine asylum process that welcomes them, and for many of the problems that force them to abandon their homes in the first place. What are these problems? They are diverse. In making this project, I intercepted two of the busiest and most perilous routes. One from the east, from the countries such as Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, crossing Turkey, and arriving in the EU on the shores of Aegean Islands, then passing through the Balkan corridor on the route north. The other is from the south, from countries in the Sahel region, Senegal, Mali, Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, crossing the Sahara Desert for Libya, where they attempt to cross the Mediterranean, hoping to reach Italy, often continuing north for countries such as France, Germany, the UK, and other wealthy nations. Almost all the countries that refugees leave behind them lie on desert thresholds. All these nations lie on the front line of climate change, their arable lands losing ground to the encroaching desert, making human life unlivable and often fomenting war, insurgency, and other forms of conflict. Eyal Weissman has recently made an excellent case for the reciprocal correlation of conflict and environmental change, particularly in areas of desertification. Our inability to manage and share the world's resources, to prevent the loss of arable lands resulting from global warming, and the endless series of wars resulting from and contributing to climate change, this constellation of factors has produced a perfect storm of human displacement. While struggling with these ideas and searching for a more adequate strategy to represent them, I accidentally came across a new camera technology which seemed to speak to many of these concepts: ambivalence, subjectivity, perception, body heat, mortality, borders, insurgency, climate change, and war. What I found was that if you add up all these factors, plus photography, if you smelt them down and cast this metal in the form of a camera, you get a specific kind of imaging technology. And this was a powerful military thermal imaging device that sees heat and can image the body from a distance of 30.3 kilometers. This camera was specifically designed by a multinational weapons company for use by militaries and police forces for battlefield situational awareness and long-range border enforcement. Employed for both search and rescue, as well as insurgent detection, it can also be used as part of advanced weapon systems for tracking and targeting the enemy. I began to work with this camera alongside a team of collaborators, the cinematographer Trevor Tweeton and the composer Ben Frost. We tried to work against the camera's original purpose, to use it against itself, to more adequately tell the stories of the journeys of refugees landing on Europe's shores, one that we hoped would engage with all of these aspects. This idea of heat, imaging heat, which we hoped would speak sideways about human displacement resulting from climate change and global warming. It also spoke more practically, even indexically, about the struggle of the refugee. To lose one's home is to lose many things, but primarily one loses warmth. In the Irish language, we have a proverb, Níl Tintán mar Hintán féin. This is our way of saying there's no place like home, but it translates as there's no hearth like your own hearth. The hearth, the floor of the fireplace, the hottest part of the home, is at the center of the very idea of home. Refugees leave everything behind, especially the home. They literally leave the heat behind them, and they expose themselves to the elements, the cold sea waves, the winter rain and the snow. Homes are replaced with tents and shelters. People die of exposure. Light is visible heat. Light fades. Heat grows cold. People's attention drifts. Media attention dwindles. Compassion is eventually exhausted. I leave you with the question, how do we find a way as photographers and as storytellers to continue to shed light on the refugee crisis and to keep the heat on these important narratives of human displacement? If we can find a way to do this, then perhaps we can preserve our own humanity and sustain our warmth as humans.
Anna, you're very welcome, and thank you for making time to join with us on what I know has been a very busy day for you. We had a look there at one of the videos in which Richard Mosse talks about the exhibition. But before we go to talk about the current exhibition, I just want you to tell us a little bit about how the movement from Kilkenny Castle to the new venue in Evans Home has transformed what the Butler Gallery aims to do. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what happened, how you got to where you are now?
Well, that's a long story, and that's a whole other conversation in itself. But which I've probably talked about to this group in the past, and it's been a long journey. It's been a long-term goal of the executive and the board to find a home of our own, especially to have a place to highlight our important permanent collection and have a home for the Tony O'Malley estate, which is a gift to the Butler Gallery that would have gone elsewhere if we didn't have a building in Kilkenny to highlight it. So that's a really terrific addition to our offer going into the future. And so I've been working on this for 15 years. When I moved from New York to Kilkenny, it was part of the goal to relocate to to have a place that, well, was accessible to everyone. That was one of the disadvantages of being in Kilkenny Castle, that a lot of our audiences couldn't access us because of stairs. There was no lift, and I think there are plans eventually to make Kilkenny Castle accessible. But that was really something that was difficult for us to work with through, because we do a very wide reach out through our learning and public engagement program, and also because of that program, we wanted to make that visible, but also our permanent collection, which there wasn't a home to show it. We could only do shows every year or two. So that collection, which is essentially owned by the people of Kilkenny, needed to have a place to be highlighted. And so our new home provides a beautiful venue to do this. And it also embraces a heritage site. So our offer has multiplied hugely by having the space now to have people enjoy the permanent collection and the O'Malley wing, and a bigger space to highlight international shows such as Richard's. I mean, we're making a nice segue into that, but that when we really hadn't a space to be able to show a work of this caliber, height-wise, or a lot of artists now are using media. So while we love the segmented galleries in Kilkenny Castle, and artists always did a beautiful job in making it their own, we needed a bigger space to do works in. And so actually it just, my relationship, I'll just sort of maybe segue into what I was about to begin with, was just some context of the Mosse family and its long association with the Butler Gallery, because it goes back as far as Stanley Mosse, who's the father of Nicholas Mosse, the ceramicist. And Stanley was one of the board members for many years, along with Peggy Butler. And the gallery was named in her honour. But I met Richard through his parents, Nicholas and Susan, when I first came to Kilkenny, and we got on really well. And I've been watching his work and the amazing development of his work over the years. So we hatched a plan to apply for the Venice Biennale in 2013, which is a major international show. And so we were lucky. It was very competitive, but we were very lucky to be appointed with Richard as the artist representing Ireland and myself as commissioner curator. And the Enclave was the piece that we showed in Venice, and it covered the war in the Congo using infrared photography that turns all green to pink. I'm not even going to go into that work because I could be here a long time talking about that, but it was a really powerful work of art that gained phenomenal international success, really launching Richard's career on a world stage, with the work traveling everywhere and him selling a lot of photography. But as part of that commitment to the work from the funding from Culture Ireland and the Arts Council, you bring it back to Ireland. So we brought it to the RHA in Dublin and the Ormston House in Limerick. But of course, we wanted to bring it to Kilkenny, but for an opportunity to show it. So this is terrific at this point, that this body of work is his follow-up to the Enclave, and it's a real joy to be able to show it in Ireland. It premiered in the Curve Gallery in the Barbican in London in 2017, and has since been seen in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, and now it has its Irish premiere in the Butler Gallery. So we're thrilled to be able to show this here. It's a world-class presentation, and because the spec for the work is very high. Richard has really high standards, as he should, and we're delighted to be able to have been able to deliver that work. But I think probably some of what I was going to say, I see you probably have covered in the video. But I'd really encourage you to come see the work in person, because the work, it's made in response to this ongoing migration crisis in the Mediterranean. Really what Richard is doing is bearing witness to this crisis and making the invisible visible, and encouraging us to take our part in Europe's involvement in this and highlighting this issue. Richard talked about the camera, so I won't go on about that. I think he explained that extremely well there in the video that you saw. But the Grid Moria piece that's outside in the grounds of the gallery is 4 meters by 9 meters, and it runs every day till the 20th of June, and it starts at 11 a.m. in the morning and is on till midnight. So I'd really encourage you to try and come. It's really terrific at dusk when the light goes down. You see this piece, but it's a 16-channel high-definition video grid that's only 6 minutes long, and it shows the Moria refugee camp, which was located on the island of Lesbos in Greece on the Aegean Sea, and it was burned down in September 2020, leaving 13,000 asylum seekers without shelter. And it depicts the provisional dwellings and surrounded by razor wire fences, security gates and loudspeakers, evoking scenes from a concentration camp inhabited by asylum seekers. So the camera registers the thermal traces of radiant bodily warmth, and each screen plays back the same footage at different intervals, creating a visual equivalent of what is known in music as a perpetual canon. The incoming piece that's inside is 52 minutes long, and I really would encourage you to come and give you that time, because there is many chapters in that work. It's a 3-screen, a 3-channel surround sound. It documents the journeys of the refugees from Europe, from the Middle East and North Africa, as I said, both works use the military grade camera. So there was a series of works, still photographs from this series called Heat Maps that Richard made, that Richard won an enormous award for. It's called the Prix Pictet Award for photography. It's a non-linear piece, so it doesn't have a beginning or end, though there is a kind of a part of the film that if you come, it's when the moon comes below the clouds on the right, and that's just an indication of how to maybe charter your 52 minutes. But it's really worth staying with it, because it's such tough material that you kind of, there are some abstracted images of the sea and sky and whatnot that you need those pauses to sort of help you through the various material that you're going to see. One thing that I thought I would do, and just as an addition, because Ian, you had said you liked hearing a little bit more. Richard had recorded a talk for the San Francisco Art Museum, and he actually went through the 52 minutes and explained some of the images that we were looking at. And I'm not intending to be prescriptive with this for your knowledge of the work, but I think it does add a layer of understanding of what you're looking at when you come. So what I'm just going to do in the bit of time we have is just go through a couple of the images and tell you a little bit more about what you would be seeing. One of the images that you see on the poster outside in the grounds of the gallery is a man with the binoculars. And he's a volunteer from Team Humanity, and he's scanning the Aegean Sea horizon in search of boats carrying refugees on the shores of Lesbos. And this volunteer has taken time off work to help out. Some of these volunteers were heroes in Richard's mind, but however, what they were doing was illegal, and so they were breaking the law. According to the European immigration law, they were seen as aiding human trafficking, and some were arrested and put in prison, which is kind of shocking to me. But you'll see also in the film that there are these big trucks laden with men mostly, hanging off the edge of the truck, kind of a convoy, and they are coming through the Sahara Desert. Very dangerous place to travel through because of all kinds of Islamicist groups, and including Al Qaeda and bandits. And you have to go through there to get to Libya and Algeria at that point. Nigeria is probably the safest route to take. But although all these refugees are on their way through Agadez, and there's this burgeoning industry of traffickers that get their passengers in these enormous convoys, and they leave on a Sunday night and they go en masse as they can through these 4-day or 6-day drives. Richard mentions that a lot of the time men fall off the trucks and are left in the Sahara Desert, and there are more bodies strewn through the Sahara Desert than there are even in the sea that they find bodies. And one scene that you'll see, and it is this very poignant scene of a man splashing his face. It's during one of the stopovers of this convoys, and he's a Muslim man preparing for the tradition called wudu, which is washing his face 3 times. And the Quran says if you cannot find water, you can use sand. So there are also men that you see with this sort of residue of sand on their face. But in this break from these terribly long journey, he's taken the time to clean his face and bend down and pray. And then eventually we'll have to jump back on the trucks. But Richard has said these scenes look like something from Mad Max. There's just so tough. There's also an image of there's some very poignant while it's tough moving in some places, there are these poignant moments where there's one of a woman in a scarf that she turns her face towards the camera, and it's a really tender portrait of a young Syrian woman and her partner who just landed on the shores of Europe. And you see the uncertainty and sense of relief of her face, though she's relieved to have landed. Her real journey has yet to begin, trying to find a life and a place beyond a refugee camp, and how to move from this situation. The camera doesn't identify her. This is one sort of, the camera anonymizes the individual. It's protecting the person's identity. Consent is very important when dealing with very vulnerable individual stateless people, and these people have human rights, but those human rights have been massively eroded in Western societies. If they're not being upheld, they can be preyed upon not only by human traffickers but also by sex traffickers or human slavers. So they've been through this dreadful. You'll see images in this piece of people in the dinghies arriving, and there's a sense of relief, but we all know that that's just one part of a long journey that they have yet to follow through with. There's one scene in the film that requires us to have a kind of caution for families, for parents to view in advance of their children, because it is a person being warmed up, and there's one that is a scene that it's a very important aspect of the journey of this entire story, is the identification of those who died along the way. And this was in a pathologist's surgery, a mortuary in the hospital on the island of Rhodes in the Aegean Sea, where rescue workers find bodies that have drowned at sea, and some could be at sea for as long as a month, and if they're eventually washed up on the shore, and they have to be put in refrigeration for a period of time until pathologists can get to it. And this particular scene is of an 11-year-old girl who isn't identified, so the scene is a saw cutting into the femur to extract this femur to ground down for DNA. So that DNA can be sent off to some central computer center, whereas they have volunteers going around places like Syria and whatnot, getting blood samples to try and match up and identify some of these lost souls that need to be repatriated with their families and buried. And that is seen in the film as well. And you see, there's various refugee camps that are covered from the Moria camp, but also one of the better ones, that there could be a better refugee camp. The one in Tempelhof Airport, there's a former Tempelhof Airport in Berlin. You might, if you've ever been to Berlin, you might have seen it. And it was built in the 1930s under Albert Schmeer's redevelopment of Berlin to create Germania, the world city. And the architecture is extremely fascist, but they've kept at peace over the years. And this became one of the of Germany's biggest refugee camps. It's an emergency shelter for refugees, and it seems like the individuals here are still in the asylum process. They're still awaiting the verdict to come back as to whether they'd be deported or not. But it is actually, if they got there, they're one of the lucky ones. They are given a weekly food, €400 for food, or an allowance for rent to try and get themselves out of that system. And it's one of the ones where you see the cubicles in the film. And again, Richard and his team were able to give people some warning a few days in advance. It's the only kind of domestic scene you'd see in the film, because if you didn't want to be identified, not that you can actually identify individuals because of this camera and the way the heat works on the body, you wouldn't really be able to recognize anyone, but they were allowed to not be in the space between 11 and 2 on this particular day. So they were they were photographed with these then. There's also, a few scenes in the jungle in Calais, where when it was burnt down, Richard and his team would be told about these things happening, that would be of interest to him, and he would drop everything. Ben Frost, the musical collaborator, is based in Reykjavik and in Iceland, and the cinematographers in New York, and they would just drop everything and they would make it to this scene so that they could capture it. And you're seeing Hollande had ordered it was allegedly ordered to take apart the jungle, and there are scenes in the film where there was actually a handmade kind of rough, a little chapel that had been put together by refugees that were in the camp, and there are these paintings or artifacts that the refugees had made themselves that were being wrapped, and you're seeing that in this scene, which is really poignant. It's very easy to watch the piece without really knowing all of this information, but it does kind of add to it. I know I see Sean O'Hargan there, and I know he's seen the piece, and it is worth watching a couple of times, because you are going to be moved. It is tough material. It's not like you're going to get and say, did you enjoy that? It is something that is moving. It is a tragedy of our times that Richard is bringing light to, that's really important. And we need to sort of acknowledge our part, or Europe's part, in perhaps not doing enough for the refugees that have experienced such tragedy in their lives. But it makes it extremely human to see individuals and children running around in this under these circumstances. I'm just trying to think if there's any other major images that I've missed out on Tempelhof.
You can share the screen if you like, Anna.
No, it's just sort of text I'm looking at the moment, just because I kind of took some notes on what I was seeing, but I think it's very much he works very closely with Ben and Trevor, and they've worked together. Now, this piece of work took 4 years to put together, and it requires so much dedication over time to make a work of this caliber. And it has been seen around the world, and it's just great that we have a chance to see it here in Ireland. Seeing that he's from Kilkenny, and he is somebody who grew up visiting the Butler Gallery and was brought to many exhibitions. I don't think his parents ever really wanted him to become an artist. He studied literature before he went to Yale, and he's an extremely smart guy, very articulate when you hear him talk about his work. And but he was drawn to becoming an artist by really his contact with viewing art over the years and having artists live in there, come visit and seeing exhibitions and growing up with that as part of his own DNA, so there wasn't any other way for him to go. But I would really encourage you to try and come and see for yourself. Sean, I don't know if you'd like to comment on your experience of seeing the work.
Yeah, I know I chipped in a little bit just before you came in. Ian invited me to, but I concur with everything you say. I would have gone to look at it as normal with a half an eye towards bringing groups of kids down from the school before the holidays. I won't be doing that. It's not. There are bits of it that are too challenging for young kids. I suppose the other thing is for children or adults with sensory issues, it probably would be worth thinking twice about them going in, because it's sensorily quite heavy in terms of both the sound and the images. And I don't think it constitutes the flashing lights warning that you'd see for some movies, but it might just be worth something bearing in mind. But it's an astonishing piece of work. And I suppose, it also, what Anna said about Richard's pride in his Kilkenny roots, definitely the highlight of my life in politics was traveling out to Venice for the Biennale, and we had the show was extraordinary. And I think Anna will attest that I've been nagging her since about getting a Richard Mosse show back to Kilkenny as quickly as we could, but she always wanted, it didn't take much persuasion, and I wanted it to happen anyway. But I think if there's any way to really announce the arrival of Evans's home as a really incredible space, it's definitely this. And the other thing I would say, we're considering it here ourselves. I know a number of people are involved in businesses, and the Muse Cafe as a switch off after you finish the show is, and we're looking at it as for some sort of a safe as possible staff get together here towards the end of the year. And so the whole package together, but it really is, and Anna's right, I'd repeat it again, make sure you have an hour to watch it fully. The piece outside the great Moria's, the one thing I'd love to see, Anna, is I'd love to see some seats installed out in the car park while Great Moria is on, because it's great just to be out in the open air. It's
only a 6-minute piece, and I suppose the car park and that was going to get in the way of that. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I do want to let you know that on our website, if you go to the butlergallery.ie and go to incoming, there's a lot of information already there. We have a robust learning and public engagement community program in response to this body of work. And the first one was a talk that I introduced Richard to Sean O'Hagan, who's the major critic for The Guardian, who's from Armagh, and he's familiar with Richard's work. And there's a conversation there. And also, I think what Ian just showed you as well. But we have a series of talks also coming up. The making of Incoming is the talk with Sean O'Hagan, and then we have a talk on the 7th of July, the spotlight on migration, the role of museums and galleries, and I'm in conversation with Sophie Henderson, who's the director of the Migration Museum, and Hina Khan, an artist, and that'll be on online, so there's booking required. Check that out if you're interested. We also have a talk on 21st of July of What Statistics Don't Tell Us with Fiona Loughnane from NCAD in conversation with Tom Fella, Head of Journalism and Communications at NUI Galway, and Nick Henderson, the CEO of the Irish Refugee Council. And you'll see their bios, and it's about, migrant and refugee stories are for the most part seen through the lens of statistics and cold figures. It's rare we get to see the person at the heart of the story, so the media reporting is often inaccurate and distorting, which in turn can negatively affect public perceptions of the very people most in need of assistance and help. So the conversations will be, how does the journalism shape public perception of the refugee crisis, and what strategies are required to insert empathy into the script. We also, a really nice project that we're working on is Migration, My Story in One Object. And we've, in collaboration with the Father McGrath Family Resource Centre and the Kilkenny and Carlow Education Training Board, we're presenting a project in which people who have migrated or had to seek refuge status in Ireland tell their stories through their own personal objects. We'll have items that were precious to them, some of the extraordinary in nature, others very ordinary, and whether the nature of the object, they all have the power to hold memories of place, of people, of events that happened in their lives. So working with the professional photographer, we're recording these objects, and we will have images of them on show in our learning centre through July and August. So, and again, we're quite sensitive to, contextualizing incoming. It's not like we would be encouraged, we would really want to talk to people about what that material is. There was one Syrian refugee who has been in with her family, and she was very used to it and was okay with the material, but I think an awful lot would be quite sensitive to the material, and we'd be certainly sympathetic to that, and working with people who would be working with them regularly to create that context and make it more of a comfortable situation for them. So yeah, I think this opportunity to collaborate with the Arts Festival has been really good, in that we were able to show Grid Moria. These are our expensive shows to produce. You come into incoming and it just looks like a black box, but the material that came 5 pallets of equipment to actually make that happen, and miles and miles of cabling, and everything's neatly tucked away, and it looks pretty slick and simple, but it's all about presenting the best case scenario. And Ben Frost's music, as Sean said, it can get loud at times, but we do have earplugs outside for anyone that might be sensitive of hearing, so that you can get a sense of the work. And yes, it's probably not suitable for smaller children, although some children have been in with some explanation from their parents. So it is, we're just delighted to have it on show here.
Yes, in many ways, Anna, it may also be called homecoming for Richard Mosse's exhibition, not just incoming. I think that it is one of the most profound exhibitions that I've ever seen in the Butler Gallery, in either its current iteration or its past one. I just want to ask you, though, in relation to how the gallery is supported and what we as members of the public can do, apart from merely attending the exhibition. What can we do to support the Butler Gallery?
Well, we have a friend scheme, which we would invite all of you to check out on our website, that you can become a member. And there are certain benefits of membership that are included there. €75 an individual, and there are other, we have a number of tiers, patrons and benefactors, and there are various things that are on offer. But that membership is really important to help us can keep our programs free. We are free. We're a free museum gallery with museum accreditation, and it makes a big difference if people engage and feel a part ownership in what we've achieved over the years, and come to events. I mean, I'm a talk later in the week for friends outside in the garden with some, refreshments and an opportunity to meet with me or different or artists over time. If Richard would, of course, be here if he could at this time, but he couldn't because of restrictions, and he happens to be in the Amazon because he's on working on his next body of work, which is about the deforestation of the Amazon and climate change, and he's off grid at the moment somewhere in the Amazon. Hopefully he'll be back with us sometime this week, but we hope to have him here in August. So we create events that some of our friends would have more an opportunity to meet the artist, or our summer party is always a big part of that Friends program. So yeah, every little bit helps, and encouraging people to come to our programs. And we often there's discounts on things, there's workshops, there's many aspects of the program that the Friends have a special opportunity to avail of.
Mm. And of
Does that
course,
answer your question?
yeah, it does indeed. I mean, I've been a friend for a long time, and I find it one of the most fulfilling things that I've been engaged in, because it's not just that you feel you're supporting a worthwhile venture, but you also get to meet other people of like interest, and people that you wouldn't otherwise meet at the various Friends events. I know that you organise tours outside of Kilkenny to various artistic exhibitions or works of interest outside of the county. The talks that are available to the public are available. A lot of these are available now online. The ones that were recorded during the last year are all available on the gallery's YouTube site.
Yeah,
and
and we
they're
had
worth
extensive. Sorry, Ian. We have an extensive program of really interesting talks in relation to Cartoon Saloon's Wolf Walkers. That show, sadly, only had a couple of weeks airing publicly in the gallery in December, and then we were closed for lockdown. And that was a really big, important show. It was our third collaboration with Cartoon Saloon, and it's always a terrific opportunity to show the art of drawing and animation, and it would have been a show that lots of school groups would have come to and enjoyed. But in lieu of that, we made a very far-reaching virtual tour, which it's sort of the way of the future. A lot of people, it did extend our audience out even to a global platform, which was really great. But it meant that people locally and nationally could come in and have a look at the working drawings that Cartoon Saloon the light shows to frame, and panels of explanation about different aspects of the work, and little video clips of perhaps interviews with the actors, the child actors that were in the film. So now that it's actually only now being released to cinemas, if any of you have children who are or anyone that's interested in animation, it's still in our past exhibitions for Cartoon Saloon. One could go in there and look at the virtual tour. And then this whole slew of terrific workshops that we had online during lockdown. We made a real effort to make them available to the public. So you're talking with the producers or the makers of the film, and all different aspects of animation. And they're all there through our YouTube channel, but you see the links on our website to avail of that. So that's been a great chance to reach out to audiences. Despite having been closed all those months, we were able to and do children's workshops, family workshops when we were closed. But we're very happy to be open again.
Yes, because in spite of everything that you have online and all the talks that were given, all the really interesting documentaries that are available online, nothing beats the actual experience of walking through the doors and viewing the exhibitions on your in the gallery, and walking around the rest of the, not just this current exhibition, that's the Richard Mosse incoming exhibition, but all the rest that the gallery has to show, particularly the Tony O'Malley wing. And it's also interesting to see Jane O'Malley's work opposite Tony's, the various Irish artists that are on show, but also works of international standing. This gallery, I think, is going to be, I hope, Ireland's Prado, in that the Tony O'Malley aspect of our gallery is utterly unique. There is no other place that so many of his works can be seen in context and near his own home. It's walking around the Butler Gallery and then going to have a cup of coffee afterwards to talk about what you've seen, or even just to contemplate by yourself. It's a huge, new, valuable experience that adds to what Kilkenny has to offer. Is there anyone who'd like to ask Anna a question? If you are, please just unmute yourself.
If I could, Ian, can I chip in? Can I make a comment and ask a question? My comment is I have to slightly disagree with something you said, Ian. You said it's the most profound exhibition you have seen at the Butler Gallery. It's one of the most profound exhibitions I've seen in my life. And bear in mind, I spent 15 years living in central London, so I've seen some pretty good exhibitions. And I came out of this utterly moved, and I thought it was wonderful, and I really recommend that people should go and see it. And the caveats were made about it being challenging. It is challenging, but buckle up and get into it. It's worth it. The question I'd like to ask is, Anna made comments about Richard Mosse talking to a group in San Francisco, explaining the exhibition. Is this available? Because if so, I'd like to watch it before I go and see the exhibition again.
Yeah, maybe Ian can send me on your email address and I'll send you the link to it.
I'll tell you, Anna, what I'll do is I'll send it to everybody.
Okay, very good.
That's the best thing to do, because I really want to encourage people, to visit the exhibition, and then I want to encourage people to consider becoming a member of the Butler Gallery.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, no, there's a link. It's an easy one through the San Francisco Art Museum, where was one of the venues for incoming, and it was the talk he did, kind of going through the pretty much not frame by frame, but it was a very interesting hour-long talk. So we'll certainly make that available to you. And as I said, there's a number of things on our website. If you check out Incoming, you'll see the talk that he had with Sean O'Hagan, who's a photography critic and quite knowledgeable about Richard's work as well. So that's interesting, along with the couple of major press that we've had so far. It was a talk with Sean Rock on Arena there a couple of weeks ago that he was interviewed, and also a two-page interview with Gemma Tipton in the Irish Times one Saturday. So we're adding to that as we go. Anything that comes up, we'll be adding to the website. So it's worth just checking in there. But thank you, Robert, for those very kind comments. And you're right. You know, this is kind of the role of artists. You know, to bring issues of our times to our attention and kind of through visual imagery, make us sit back and think about these important issues and find a way in. I mean, with Richard's past work, The Enclave, which was quite beautiful to look at, but highlighted the conflict in the Congo. It was something he often says is beauty is the sharpest tool in the box, and you bring people in by making incredible works of art. And so through Ben's sound, which is so immersive, you are brought into this issue and you can't turn away. You really have to bear witness to it. So thank you for coming, and I'm glad you had a good experience from it. So thank you.
A last question for you, Anna. With all of the material that's available, is it better to see the exhibition and then read the material, or to be prepared in advance to read the material and view it first? before going to see the exhibition?
I think most people that come out say, oh, should have read that press release before, now I know what I was looking at. The press release, there is a stand just before you enter the gallery that gives you a sort of a succinct breakdown of what you're going to look at. You don't need all of this background that I may have filled you in, or it does add to a richness of experience to be equipped with as much information as possible. But you just need a bit of it. I think if you understand the context of what you're looking at and the way the camera works, it's a richer experience. So I would advise one just to read that alone, and then if you're interested, to seek the interviews and the more of the information following that.
Or else you can do what Robert has done, go and view it, then read the material, and then go and view the exhibition again.
Again, that's it. This is free. You can come anytime. You do have to book in though, although people can kind of come up to the gallery. If we haven't reached capacity for that hour, we'll allow people in, because we also have to recognize some physical distancing in the gallery. But it's best to book in if you can, but that's not necessarily means that there isn't places if you just wanted to wander up someday and say, could you get in? So we're open, we're open now right through, we're open today actually, just because Brightening Air is for 10 days. So right through to Sunday, but normally our hours would be Tuesday to Sunday, 10 to 5, and late night on a Thursday night till 8 o'clock. But this week, we're open late on Friday, Thursday and Friday till 8 o'clock. So if anyone wanted to come after work or whatnot, you'd have a chance to come see, and maybe you have a mezza plate outside with Sharon from Muse, and make an evening of it. So yeah.
Well, it's added to the tourism experience of Kilkenny, but in many ways it makes us feel abroad at home. This international exhibition and all that the Butler Gallery has to offer really does enhance Kilkenny life. Thank you very much, Anna, for all you've done, not just in talking to us today, but for all that you've done over the many years that you've been director of the Butler Gallery. You've certainly provided exhibitions of a unique standard, and I hope that we'll continue to do so for many years to come. Everybody, we have 2 meetings in the coming week. We will be, next Monday is our club assembly meeting at 1 p.m. and on Wednesday of this week at 8:30 p.m. we will have a meeting of our council. Our final meeting on the 28th, this day fortnight, is my last as president for this year, and I'll be interviewing my own son, Rian Coulter, who'll be talking to us from London. And in the meantime, I wish you all every joy during this coming fine week, and I hope that many of you make an opportunity to visit the Butler Gallery and to see both Grid Moria and Incoming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.